The tickets have been punched, and now we're only days away from the U.S. men's national team kicking off against Wales in the opening match of the 2022 World Cup group stage.
And it's a goal for the United States. Le va a pegar al arco, busca el pelotazo, golazo.
Simplistic, you're listening to Stars and Stripes.
That's right, guys. Like Chaz mentioned, the World Cup is only days away. This is something that I know I've been looking forward to for 8 years. I know a lot of Americans have been doing the same.
We all pumped up, baby. We pumped.
Yeah, of course.
And welcome back too, man. It's been a while since you've been on here.
I was about to say it's been a while since we've been together on a show. I'm over here in a little tiki room. Contrary to what it looks like, I am in the States. I know it's just my bedroom for the time being, but I'm excited. I know Chaz and I are already planning where we're going to be going to watch these games. Hopefully, we'll be updating you guys on socials as to where we'll be and where we'll be watching the games. That'll be some crazy parties, getting together, getting the United States men's national team community together. It's going to be a great time, man.
Dude, the atmosphere, excited. Electricity. We can't be in Qatar because of our schedules and, the whole thing that it costs a hell of a lot of money to find a hotel room in Qatar right now. Rumor has it things are going for about multiple grand per night for one of those hotel rooms. I don't know how the hell that city's going to be able to. I saw a stat today. 2.9 billion people live in Qatar. They're expecting 1.5 million people to be visiting in the next month. I don't know how the hell the infrastructure is going to be able to support it, but nonetheless, I am so excited. The team is out, and why don't we just go through those names real quick before we get into all the busts and the snubs and all that stuff. So starting off, we'll just go in number order. Matt Turner, the goalkeeper, Serginho Dest, Walker Zimmerman, Tyler Adams, Anthony Robinson, Yunus Musa, Giovanni Reyna, Weston McKennie, Jesus Ferreira, Christian Pulisic, Brendan Aronson, Ethan Horvath, Tim Ream, Luca Della Torre, Aaron Long, Jordan Morris, Christian Roldan, Shaq Moore, Haji Wright, Cameron Carter-Vickers, Tim Weah, DeAndre Yedlin, Kellen Acosta, Josh Sargent, Sean Johnson, and Joe Scally.
Right off the bat, I want to ask you, just before we get into it, like what we plan for our reactions, one name you just read, what is the first name that stands out to you, whether good or bad?
Haji Wright. And I think that's the one that will stand out to all U.S. soccer fans. And I think we were all thinking it was going to be between Pepe and Pefok. And that's kind of how it was being built up. Who's going to be the big striker? And then out of nowhere, Haji Wright comes into this conversation. When I recorded the podcast episode and the episode I put up on YouTube for predicting who the players are going to be, I had Haji Wright's name there, but I just blew him out of the water. Just kind of was like, oh, he hasn't played enough with the national team. He didn't do well in those two camps that he came into. Greg Berhalter ripped him a new one. He was one of the last people that I was expecting to be on the plane to Qatar. I didn't even think he was really on the bubble. I thought he was pretty decently far on the outside looking in.
Yeah, I gotta agree with you there. It's definitely a weird one, and it's at the same time you got to think. I mean, for how many years we've been talking about this striker conversation, saying like who's gonna be our number 9, who's gonna be our front man in Qatar, and it looks like it went all the way up to the wire, and it looks like even maybe Greg Berhalter didn't even know at times, and he just had to make a decision. But that being said, all these guys that you mentioned have been on great form. So you can't take away anything from, Pefok, from Pepe, and say, oh, Haji's been in better form right now. Because no, I mean, even since the squad's been announced, Pepe's been on a mad one. He's been on a tear, man. He's doing great.
Scored another goal.
Exactly.
Union Berlin for Pefok, they're still on top of the title. But to be fair to Haji, he has 9 goals in 12 games. So he has been scoring a lot of goals for over in that Turkish league. I'm not even going to pretend to try and announce that. And Antalyaspor, and one of those hard clubs to pronounce the name over in Turkey. But this reminds me of Herculez Gomez getting selected to the World Cup back in 2010. Only a couple caps before, hadn't really been around the national team, but he was playing well, and Bob Bradley took him. And I think that's kind of what happened with Haji Wright here.
Yeah, and I think what makes this pick so interesting too is we have squad players. It's a 26-man squad, and only 11 start the game. There's plenty of squad players in here. You got Shaq Moore, you got Joe Staley, whatever. These guys may not see that much of the field, but they're there for cover. The thing with someone like Haji Wright is he is going to be called upon at times. There's going to be scenarios in this tournament where things might not go our way, and we're going to have to look at our bench for attacking options. And that is where Haji Wright is going to be the guy that we're going to turn to. So Greg fully made this decision knowing that Haji Wright is going to be that option off the bench. And for me, I mean, it may not have been my first pick, but it's who Greg is going with. And the community sure as hell has to hope that Greg is not wrong on this one, because you cannot be making these, loose-minded decisions for the World Cup. I mean, it has to pay off by choosing Haji Wright. So we'll see how that goes.
Yeah, it just kind of feels like Haji Wright is meant to score at this tournament, given all the things that are going on right now. And like you said, he's going to play a role in this tournament. That's without a doubt. If the U.S. are trailing a match and they needed just a change of pace to throw a big guy up there to try and whip crosses in, he's going to be there. He's that target man. He's got pace. He's big. He's fast. He's strong. And he's going to be the guy that you need to whip those crosses into and try and catch up in a game, maybe steal a goal here and there to keep going, maybe to, whether that's trying to finish off the thing and qualify for the next round, or if it's in a knockout stage, down a goal, you need to bring this thing to extra time. Haji Wright's going to be the guy. But when you talk about Jordan Pefok and Ricardo Pepi, both of them should be absolutely livid and feel like they got snubbed, because to be fair to both of them, I feel like they did enough to be in this squad.
Yeah, absolutely. And not to take away from Haji, because he's in good form and he's a great player, very similar to Pefok in that regard. He's going to offer us a big guy up top to whip balls into and poach some goals, whatever. But I think for me, since they're all on form, since they're all doing great with their clubs, for me, I just got to look to their past with the national team, and that is what makes the difference. I mean, even in the goalkeeper conversation, if we want to turn to that now, what makes the difference for me in that talk is the history with the national team, because at a tournament like this, regardless of if you're playing or if you just sit the bench for all 3 games and you're out, you go back home, whatever, the chemistry and the relationship that you bring over to a country and over to a big tournament like this is a huge part in the dynamic that you're going to have in your training camps. And you got to take that into consideration with the squad when you're building a squad as a whole. So for me, like Pefok, Pepi, they've been around this team. They've won trophies with this team, and now they're not coming to the tournament.
They both played a key role in winning trophies. When you think of Jordan Pefok and the Nations League, and then you think Ricardo Pepi saved Greg Berhalter's job during qualifying. But one last point on Haji Wright and the chemistry. He did grow up playing with many of these players within the youth national teams. That's not something I really thought about or considered before his selection. So many of the players he actually does have familiarity with. He's been playing with them since they were both, and all of them at such a young age, going up through the U17s, U18s. He and Christian Pulisic, both very close friends. So that's just one example. So it's not like he hasn't played with many of these players. But to your point, he's only played in 3 games for the U.S. senior team. That's, considering when you're looking at the other options, it's a bit out of left field. But got to get behind the boys. And you mentioned the goalkeeper position. No Zach Steffen. I think that came as a surprise to many people. Yes, it kind of got leaked on Twitter beforehand, but we almost didn't believe it, because we're like, Zach Steffen, okay, maybe he's not the number one, because the whole conversation has been Steffen or Turner. Who's the number one? Well, Matt Turner's definitely the number one now.
Yeah, I think I texted you right before we were talking about the news, and I said, oh, I don't buy it for a second. I think it's whatever. Just paper talk, maybe speculation. And then the squads came out, sure enough. Sean Johnson is the guy that's coming in, even Ethan Horvath coming in. And look, man, this one's a tough one for me, because like I mentioned, even if you're not playing, Zach Steffen has been one of these players that's been like the heart and soul of the team. He's been part of this core squad for so long. I mean, you put Zach Steffen's name up there when you talk about Weston McKennie, when you talk about Christian Pulisic. And regardless of if he's in form or not, I mean, we've seen a Michael Bradley who's out of form go to these type of tournaments. But the fact of the
I don't know if we
matter
want to
is,
compare Zach Steffen to Michael Bradley. Michael Bradley,
fact of the
to
matter
all
is,
due respect to Michael Bradley, I mean, I know he's been, the end of some jokes recently, but he is arguably one of the best U.S. men's national team midfielders of all time. So you go back to your point, but we got to put some respect on Mr. Bradley's name there.
Of course. What the point I'm trying to make here is that sometimes in a tournament, and especially in the goalkeeper position, you're not going to run through 3 goalkeepers in a tournament. Very unlikely. Knock on wood, actually, because who knows what will happen. But look, if you could bring a player like Zach Steffen, who, like I said, has won trophies, who has been a core player of this team, he's shown his commitment to this team, and he's worked hard for this team. I don't understand what the decision is in not taking him, especially for someone like Sean Johnson, who has not been around as often as he has.
Well, Sean Johnson's been in the squad for many of these tournament games and friendlies and qualifiers. He just hasn't played. And now I don't think there's any world that Zach Steffen is not one of the 3 best goalkeepers in the U.S. player pool right now. Where my mind goes to is almost like the NFL quarterback debacle. There's that saying where if you have 2 quarterbacks, you have no quarterbacks. I think this could just be a chemistry thing, and Greg didn't want to divide the squad in being, should it be Turner or should it be Steffen? And he's like, Matt Turner's our guy. I don't want there to be any competition. There's no doubt that Matt Turner is the guy. He's going to be our number 1. He's the goalie. If Zach Steffen's there, you could have thoughts being like, if Matt Turner makes a mistake, we got Zach Steffen back there, man. Like, he was the one that was there for most of qualifying. Like, why don't we throw him in? Like, why is he not in the goal?
Yeah, exactly. And I don't buy all that whatever NFL analogy, because the fact of the matter is, you look at the big countries, you look at Spain, you look at France, they're bringing their best players. That's at the end of the day, they bring their best players because this is what they build up to for 4 years. So you if you want to be a big team, if you want to be a team with a good squad depth, you have to be willing to have those chemistry issues, because sometimes there's going to be big players that butt heads, and one of them is going to play, the other doesn't, and that's just problems that teams with good squad depth have. It's a good problem to have. So I don't think that should have been something on Greg's mind, if anything. But this is the reality.
Absolutely. Another couple guys that maybe a surprise inclusion here. Christian Roldan. I think many of us thought he would be on the outside looking in, but we saw Greg Berhalter err a little bit of be more conservative in his selection by taking a guy like Christian Roldan over a Malik Tillman.
Yeah, and that one I think just has to come from the Weston McKennie issues that he's been having in recent weeks. It looks like he's healthy now. He's out there training with the squad and whatnot, but we have Kellen Acosta, but it's just a matter of having that depth in midfield, and that person that could play a wide variety of roles in the midfield, kind of just a
jack of all trades.
Exactly. Yeah. And somebody who's reliable. And we've seen Christian Roldan be a reliable guy in the MLS for a long time. And I think it's somebody just like Kellen Acosta, somebody that you can look back at and say, this is a guy that'll at the bare minimum do his job.
I think that's pretty much a very fair way to sum up Christian Roldan. He's almost like the U.S. version of James Milner. And that's no disrespect to him at all. James Milner has gone out and had a great career, played for England. Obviously, I'm a Liverpool fan. Love me some James Milner. And then the biggest happy surprise, I think, for both of us, Tim Ream. I think you and I, when we talked before that episode, and I displayed it on that episode, doing the squad prediction, I didn't think Tim Ream was going to make it in. I thought it was kind of going to be a John Brooks, almost like, oh, we know what he's worth, or, oh, he's too old. He doesn't have the pace to do it. But he's been playing very, very well over in the Premier League, and he earned that spot on the plane. And I think that professionalism, that experience, yes, he hasn't played in the World Cup. DeAndre Edlin's the only guy in the squad that has, and he was a kid back then. But I think Tim Ream being on the plane to Qatar, whether he plays or not, is going to be huge and is a very good thing for this team.
Yeah, I think absolutely that this is one of my favorite picks from Berhalter because it just goes to show what putting your head down, hard work can result in. Tim Ream is not somebody that, if you asked me a year ago, that I would have predicted to be a part of this squad, just because of purely his age. But he's even showing people like Pep Guardiola up. I mean, you see Fulham play Manchester City. Pep talks to him after saying, "Hey, if you were 25 instead of 35, you'd be playing for me." And
well, no, he said 24 instead of 34, you'd be playing for me. And Tim Ream responded in an absolute G way. I'm 35.
Yeah, exactly. And that just goes to show how good a form Tim Ream has been in, because I mean, even United just played them last week, and I got a closer eye on him then, and he's just really solidified himself as a top Premier League defender, and that's not easy to do when you're 35, especially at a team like Fulham.
Yeah, and one of the points that Greg Berhalter made and kind of touched on briefly in his post squad release press conferences was the familiarity with a lot of the opponents. So guys like Tim Ream, Anthony Robinson, he mentioned it with Josh Sargent. They've played against a lot of the players that we're going to see in that group stage between England and Wales, whether it be in the Premier League or in the Championship. So that familiarity against some of the opposition could be a big reason why Greg maybe have leaned their way, especially when it comes to the injuries to guys like Miles Robinson, who we knew was going to be out, and Chris Richards, who was a late drop because of his fitness issues with Crystal Palace. Two guys that probably would have been in the squad.
Yeah, absolutely. And with that, I mean, I think we have good depth in defense. Obviously, like you mentioned, we have some players that didn't make it, but I feel confident that the players that we have can at least do the jobs against the teams like Wales, against the teams like Iran, England, when we get tested more so. Like you said, these guys have played against a lot of those players, so I'm sure that'll come in handy. But with that, I want to ask you, Jazz, what are some other of our weaknesses in this squad? I mean, we talked about the midfield too, but are we missing anything?
I think the only thing with the midfield is the fitness question marks around Weston McKennie, and that could be why we saw Brendan Aronson listed as a midfielder, which kind of came as a little bit of a surprise. You would have expected him to be listed as a winger or a forward, like many of the other players that have played similar positions and where he's played before for the U.S. But if Weston McKennie isn't fit for that Wales game, especially, I think it's very realistic that we could see a midfield three of Musa, Tyler Adams, and Brendan Aronson. He's a very versatile player. But in terms of weaknesses, I know we were just praising Tim Ream, but that left-sided center half. Tim Ream hasn't played for the national team for a long time. We don't know exactly what his chemistry is like with Walker Zimmerman. He hasn't played many matches with him. That's one of the biggest question marks. And the other biggest question mark, it's been the biggest question mark through out qualifying number 9. Can Jesus Ferreira score the goals? Can Josh Sargent score the goals? Can Haji Wright finish the ball in front of the net if given to him?
Yeah, I have to agree with you then. I'm really nervous to see who is going to be that starting man against Wales on Monday, because that starting position is going to come with a tremendous amount of weight, because we have expectations going into this tournament that our attack is lacking, its finishing touch. Our attack, we can't capitalize on possession. So personally, I don't see Ferreira as being that guy. And frankly, I also don't see Sargent as being that guy. So that's why when we talk about Wright, I think he's going to play a big role. And even then, it's still weakness as our number 9. And I just really don't know where the goals are going to come from. If they're not coming from Aronson, Weah, or Pulisic, who's going to be finishing them?
Well, those guys are the names right there. The strength of this team is in wide areas, both from the wingers and from the fullbacks. Center back depth also could be a little bit of an issue. Only 4 center backs on this roster. You would have expected probably 5. But both sides of the wing back roles and from the forwards. I mean, think about the options that we have on the right and the left wing. Christian Pulisic obviously is going to be the guy on the left, But we have Brendan Aronson, Timothy Weah, Giovanni Reyna. Then you have a guy like Jordan Morris who offers a change of pace. He's a pretty darn good player too, that you can add his name into the hat. That's a big time strength. All those guys can contribute to goals, both assisting and finishing. And then when you look at the attacking options from the wingback roles, obviously we know what Serginho Dest is. We saw that goal he scored against Costa Rica. We know how attack-minded he is. Anthony Robinson has been an absolute rock for this national team since he's established himself as that premier left back. Then you got DeAndre Yedlin with the pace and his experience being the old head, which is crazy to think that he is. And then a guy like a wild card like Joe Scally, who'd been playing so well this season and last since breaking through at Borussia Mönchengladbach. The wide areas are where this team stacks up against many of the best teams in this tournament in terms of depth.
Yeah, and at the same time, the versatility in these wide players to play different roles in the team, depending on the opponent we're going against, depending on what the status of the game is. Obviously, Aronson, Pulisic, even Weah, Giovanni Reyna. These are guys who are comfortable in switching things up, playing different systems, and I think that also is one of our big strengths is our ability to work on the cuff or roll with the punches, depending on what is asked of our front men. We can switch things up. We can swap wings. All of these guys are very capable of playing anywhere in the front four, which is a good thing to have.
So Greg Berhalter already picked the 26 names on the plane over to Qatar. What could even be more difficult is picking that starting 11, especially in some areas. Obviously, some guys in the team pick themselves, but there are a lot of options for some of these positions and a lot of options that offer different things and all probably deserve to be starting this 11. But Ryan, why don't we start with the goalkeeper? And with no Zach Steffen in the squad, it's pretty obvious that Matt Turner is the number one.
Yeah, that one is as much of a no-brainer as one can get. I mean, I'd even go as far to say that our fullbacks are a no-brainer as well. They're pretty much right-ins, Anthony Robinson and Serginho Dest. I mean, as far as we've seen this team come along in the past few years, yeah, I think that's always been the case. There's been, likes of Reggie Cannon, DeAndre Yedlin get in there. Obviously, Yedlin is here. Shaq Moore is here.
Do you think DeAndre Yedlin, maybe he's the first reserve fullback, but do you think there's any shout for him to be a starter?
Yeah, and I think he can absolutely be a starter, depending on the opponent. I think for someone like Wales, especially when they have Dan James, have Gareth Bale at the pace, he could be somebody that offers us some both physicality and pace to counteract that. I think, but at the same time, I think Serginho Dest and Anthony Robinson offer us so much more in attack. So, and it against a team like maybe England, where we're going to have to create more and work harder off and on the ball. I think that is where our best 11 is going to be played, and that is when Serginho Dest and Anthony Robinson start.
And then you mentioned one guy, Walker Zimmerman. I think we can pencil him right into that right center back position. He's pretty much made that spot his own over the course of the last Nations League and the end of World Cup qualifying. First big controversial spot, though, left-sided center half. The options, Tim Ream, Aaron Long, Cameron Carter-Vickers. And starting with Aaron Long, he was the guy that had been the partner for Walker Zimmerman in the most recent matches. However, he hasn't really covered himself in glory. He's gotten caught out a couple times, especially on the counterattack, which could come up big against Wales because we know that's the way Wales likes to play. Then you got Tim Ream, a little bit older, doesn't quite have the pace, but he's been playing very well over in the Premier League, but he hasn't been a lot in the squad as of late. And then you got Cameron Carter-Vickers, who's probably the third reserve emergency center back.
Yeah, and when I think personally, like I said, the game against England, where our best 11 is going to have to be played, I think Tim Ream is the first one that comes to my mind because he's played against all these English players. He's proven himself able to keep up at that pace. But I think potentially against someone like Iran or Wales is where we could see someone else, someone who's potentially better at playing the ball out of the back, getting
Tim Ream's the
forward.
best. Tim Ream's the best passer that we have as a center back. That I have no doubt about, and that's also an option for the Wales and Iran games where they're going to sit as a low block team. His passing could be an asset. For me, it's Tim Ream. I think Tim Ream right now starts alongside Aaron Long. And his relationship with Anthony Robinson, obviously they play in the same back line for their club week in and week out. They have a very good understanding of the way the two of them operate. He's a left-footed center half. I think Tim Ream's the guy.
So you said Tim Ream and Aaron Long?
Oh, sorry. Tim Ream, Walker Zimmerman.
Okay.
I meant the relationship was with Anthony Robinson.
Yeah. Okay.
Along that left side with Fulham.
Yeah, I mean, as much as I'm trying to make a case here for these other center backs and trying to think where they get involved, I think Tim Ream has just done too much to solidify himself as that guy who's gonna play next to.
But don't get me wrong. If Tim Ream gets exposed for his lack of pace, don't be surprised to see Aaron Long. I think both Tim Ream and Aaron Long over the course of this group stage are going to at least start one match between the two of them.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, going on past that back line, it seems like we're both in agreement on those four. Now moving into the midfield is where things might get more interesting as we take into consideration fitness and everything, and the depth that we have here. But I think one guy who is pretty nailed on, in my opinion, would be Yunus Musa.
Yeah, Yunus Musa definitely is. That wasn't the name I was expecting to hear first, but I mean, Yunus Musa, since he's come into this national team, has been an absolute stud. Well above his years, his composure on the ball, his ability to drive forward with the ball, we talked about time and time again, is just not something you see in a guy that's just about to turn 20. And then the guy that you mentioned, who I thought you were going to say, Tyler Adams. I think Tyler Adams is probably one of the few most easy nailed on starters that there is, regardless of the system that we play. There's been different, thoughts tossed around on the internet. Maybe do we stick with the 4-3-3? Do we go to a 4-2-3-1? I think the best 11 is the 4-3-3, and you stick with that midfield. Obviously, has to do with McKennie's fitness, but I think it's McKennie, Adams, Musa.
Yeah, I mean, it's there's not really too much controversy in there. I think the controversy comes when one of them gets injured or when it's time to make a change. But if we want to talk about our best all time or best 2022 11, it's got to be those three, and there's not too much debating around it. McKennie seems to be doing all right, so like we mentioned earlier, I think that should be okay. But other than that, Yunus Musa and Adams, they've got to be nailed on.
Front line, where it gets a little bit more complicated, but what isn't complicated is one of the names in that front three. We all know Christian Pulisic has got to be starting for the U.S. men's national team. He's going to be wearing the armband, I'm sure, and this is the moment he's been waiting for. I think this is Christian Pulisic's opportunity. He missed out in 2018 to really announce himself on the world stage. And I think this is where he can truly put all that hype and everything that he's done, everything he's been working for has been to represent the U.S. on the world stage, wearing that number 10, wearing the armband. This is his team. And I think everybody knows it.
Absolutely. The poster boy has got to be one of those guys in the front three. And
are we putting him out on the left? Or are we
yes.
trying to maybe move him centrally, depending on formation?
I mean, my personal favorite, if we want to talk about what our best would be, I know that Weah is going to have to be a part of that front three, for me at least. And the only place where I would put Weah in our best 11 is down the middle. I think that like his directness alongside the creativity of whether Gio Reyna, Aronson, Pulisic around him, I think that's like huge threat. So in my opinion, I think you got to put Pulisic on the left to make the most out of him and to get something out of the number 9.
So are you putting Tim Weah as your number 9 for
I'm putting
the
Tim
best
Weah as
11?
my number 9 in our best 11 because I just frankly do not have any faith or very little faith. I want to be positive, guys. I want to be positive. I have very little faith in those out and out strikers that Greg brought. But personally, I would be going for Yunus Musa as a number 9 before any of those options.
Yunus Musa's a number 9?
I mean,
or
not
Tim
Yunus
Weah?
Musa.
I was like, oh, we're getting real crazy now.
We're getting
But
radical here.
See,
No,
I think
Weah.
that's what we've all been asking for. U.S. fans have been trying to see Tim Weah. That's where he played as a kid in all those youth tournaments for the national team. He came up as a 9. His dad is one of the best ever at it. Greg briefly mentioned that he can play there during his press conference. However, we just haven't seen it. There's been opportunities to see Tim Weah play in that role. We haven't seen it. And for that Wales game, I don't necessarily think that it suits Tim Weah. We're going to see him. I think we're going to see him coming off the bench, though, for that Wales game. Against England, that's another story when we're not going to have the ball. And that pace in behind, that directness can really cause a guy like, as you know very well, Luke Shaw, some major issues. And if Harry Maguire's on that side, good luck trying to stop Tim Weah's pace. But for the Wales game, I'm going with Gio Reyna. He's the most gifted passer that we have in the entire player pool. He's finally fit. He's in a pretty good run of form right now for Dortmund. He's starting to score goals. He's really starting to get back into himself. And we haven't seen Christian Pulisic and Gio Reyna fit and firing at their best since the Nations League. And we saw the dynamite and the fireworks that they were able to create coming from both of those sides. And I really like that opportunity. And Greg Berhalter's probably going to go with Jesus Ferreira up top to start off with. I would go with Josh Sargent. I think he's the most complete center forward option that we have. Now, all 3 of these guys are going to play and they all offer something different. But in terms of his ability to both link up play with the guys in midfield and out wide, bring them in, the relationships with, most importantly, our guy out on the left, Christian Pulisic, and their ability to finish inside the box, I'm going with Josh Sargent. He's found his shooting boots once again in the championship. And for me, right now, I think Josh Sargent's the best option for the number 9 position.
Yeah. In my more realistic starting 11, I would be putting Josh Sargent there as well. But since I've already put Tim Weah there myself, in my best starting 11, I'm looking over at the right, and I think that's where I disagree with you. I think I'm taking Brendan Aronson over there because just the way that we've seen him mature with the national team, with these transfers moving to the Premier League, he is just too much of an asset. He's contributed too much to this national team. He's been too productive as far as assists, goals. He's gotten the job done, and this is the time to take full advantage of that. We've seen it in qualifying. We've seen it in these tournaments. So why would we not take advantage of that goal assist output now and let him lead the line?
I know it's crazy to think that he might not make the starting 11, but even if he isn't the starting 11, I think he's a great option coming off the bench too. The energy that he brings, his ability to press when the defensive opposing back line and defense is tired and they have been having to deal with guys maybe like Gio Reyna, like Josh Sargent running the channels. That's a thing. Another option that's been floated around, Gio Reyna or Brendan Aronson or even a Christian Pulisic playing as a false 9. What are your thoughts on that?
Man, I just wish that this conversation wasn't kicking up a few days before the World Cup, you know? And we've seen Christian try the false 9 and it hasn't worked. So that's not something that I would want to see. Frankly, with Christian, that's that. As far as Aronson, Gio, if who knows, maybe they would be better equipped to be the false 9, but I just don't think it's something that we could just try all of a sudden and put all of our faith into that in a tournament like the World Cup. I mean, in my opinion, this is why we should have come prepared more in the striker department, but it's just been too much of an issue lately. So we'll see if Greg falls back on that. But for me, I think it's just it's not, we shouldn't be trying to workshop during the World Cup.
If McKennie isn't ready to go for Wales and the fitness isn't there, what do? Do you throw Brendan Aronson in midfield? That's something we've discussed on earlier if you're listening in podcast form, or on an earlier video if you're watching this on YouTube. He was listed as a midfielder. Do you think it's as simple as Brendan Aronson just slips down into that Weston McKennie role and maybe operates a little bit higher up the field and they drop Yunus Musa, maybe a double pivot type thing? Or could you see a world where we change formation, go 4-2-3-1, maybe move Christian Pulisic into the 10, where we saw him more a couple years ago playing, and have a guy like Brendan Aronson on one side and then either a Timothy Weah or a Gio Reyna on the other side?
Yeah, I think just as far as risk taking goes, I think it's more likely that a guy like Kellen Acosta, Christian Roldan comes in before Aronson, because as good as it sounds to have all these attacking minded players, like I said, we can't be workshopping this stuff against England. We got to have people that can cover, people who can defend, and make sure that we don't make a fool of ourselves on the biggest stage out there.
Yeah, but it's also international football. There's this thought in my mind that keeps circling around. What if we just say screw it and just put the best players that you have on the field, regardless of their positions, and maybe where they play specifically. But if you just get the best attacking players on the field, whether that be maybe you have to throw Christian Pulisic in the center, or you have to throw Gio Reyna as a false nine, but you want to get Aronson, Pulisic, Reyna, and Weah all on the field at the same time.
Yeah, sure. I mean, in the 75th minute, I think that's a move. Go for it. If we're down 1-0, you got to do that. You got to get the best footed players out there. But if we're trying to start, I mean, at the start of the game, have a good setup, a strong setup. We can't leave ourselves exposed in the midfield, and I don't know how much Aronson is going to offer in that regard as far as what Weston McKennie does.
Well, regardless of who Greg does end up deciding, it's a good thing to have a lot of these options, especially in the attacking department, because a couple of years ago didn't exist. And this is a young and hungry team, and I cannot wait to see all of these guys go at Wales in just a few days' time.
All right, so we got to get down into the nitty-gritty about our first opponent, Wales. If you guys are watching on YouTube, the short form version, in the podcast earlier, we talked about our strengths and weaknesses. But now to talk a little bit about Wales, I just look at their squad. The first word I think of is underwhelming, Chaz.
Yeah, I think a big part of it is Gareth Bale. I mean, yeah, he had a great moment in the MLS Cup final for LAFC, but he's not the same Gareth Bale as he used to be. We saw this Wales team a couple of Euros ago make a run where they really captured, the hearts and souls of football fans around the world. I just don't see that being the same team, but they still play the same way. And there's still players in this squad that can definitely cause issues for this U.S. team. But this is a team the U.S. has to beat. The opening match, if you get 3 points in this game, you are setting yourself up for so much success. The numbers speak for themselves. When you win that first game, more times than not, you're going to the knockout stages. And that's really where this U.S. team needs to take the next step. They've qualified for the World Cup. Yeah, well, the U.S. should qualify for the World Cup. Can they get out of the group? They should get out of the group.
Yeah, and you talk about, the Wales teams we've seen in the past, and whatnot. And just to talk more about that, I think we're just seeing more and more of those players that we've seen with Wales a long time. I mean, Joe Allen, Gareth Bale,
Aaron Ramsey,
Ben Davies, all these guys have been with the team for so long, but they've also been very uninspiring for so long. I mean, they haven't offered much to Wales, and now they're coming back to this tournament even older, even less inspiring. And you mentioned Gareth Bale having his moments, and don't get me wrong, I don't want to be caught on this podcast talking down on Gareth Bale. He's going to come up with a moment, whether it's a free kick, whether it's pacing someone out, could be Tim Ream for all I know. But fact of the matter is that there's very little that that frankly, very little that worries me. And maybe I'm being a bit naive, but
the counterattack is where they can cause us issues. And when you talk about, it's same old Wales or an underwhelming Wales, the team still plays the same. They're going to low block, they're going to try and absorb pressure and hit on the counterattack. And that's where they could cause the U.S. some issues. While they are seeing some aging players like a Gareth Bale, and then in midfield like Aaron Ramsey, like Joe Allen, there are players that do have some pace. You mentioned earlier, for those of you guys listening on the podcast form, Daniel James. For all of Daniel James's issues with his final and end product, he's absolutely rapid. And if your fullbacks are caught high up the field, which is very possible that could happen given the way this U.S. team plays and the way that our fullbacks like to play, it's very possible that Dan James could be running in a straight line going against Walker Zimmerman or Tim Ream or Cameron Carter-Vickers or an Aaron Long. That could cause issues. A guy like Harry Wilson, who both Tim Ream and Anthony Robinson are very familiar with, their teammate at Fulham, he's a very tricky player. He's got a heck of a left foot. He can curl one in and have a moment of magic. So, yes, this isn't quite the Wales team of a couple of years ago, but there definitely are some players in here that can cause some major issues and that have moments of magic in them.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously, like I said, I don't want to be caught underestimating this side. I think obviously you come to a tournament and you're going to put on your best performance. But they have a lot of players, which for the first time I'm seeing as a team that's centered out of the British Isles, that we have almost more Premier League players than them. It seems like they have a lot of lower division players who may not be ready for such a big occasion, such a big, tournament, obviously, playing in the lower divisions of England. So a lot of the younger players are coming from that kind of background. So it's going to be interesting to see what they all have to offer versus these old farts that we're also talking about, and what they continue to bring to this team.
So what do you think the biggest keys to the game, if you will, to use an American term, a very cliche American thing, but how do the U.S. beat Wales here?
We're going to need an attacking trio that's good at linking up, and that's where I look to Josh Sargent, a guy who has good chemistry, good relationship with Christian Pulisic, guys that could have good movement on and off the ball to break down this team, who's probably going to be sitting fairly deep, waiting for us to make the mistake. We have to be the team that's in possession, making stuff happen. And in games past, we've seen the United States struggle to capitalize in games like that, and not take advantage of possession and not be able to find the back of the net. And so this is going to come. A lot of it's going to come down to how well we break down this defense and how well we can capitalize on those opportunities.
And when it comes to an X factor in this game, you mentioned Christian Pulisic. We know that that's where a lot of Wales's focus is going to be on. And for the U.S. to have a success in this World Cup, Christian really needs to step up. But where I really think could be the biggest thing in this game, Gio Reyna. He's the guy that has the ability to find that pass, to pick that ball that can unlock a defense. And many times it might be going to a guy like Christian Pulisic. So I think Gio Reyna is absolutely key, especially if he starts. We talked about in our preferred starting 11s, I think especially for this Wales game, Giovanni Reyna is absolutely essential to have in that US 11. And I'm just excited to see him play with Christian again. It's been so long. We haven't seen them play together fully fit and firing.
Yeah, I think this opportunity against Wales is the perfect chance to see some of those, beautiful link up plays that like almost those plays that we see that makes us think that they're like on the same wavelength. They're just thinking together. They have the same mind. And that's what's going to break down this team. It's not going to be crosses into the box to Josh Sargent of all people. We're not going to be whipping things in and nodding headers down, past Ben Davies. That's not the route of attack that is going to win us this game. It's going to be those plays that break down the defense, those passes, those line breaking through balls, those runs behind the defense, that is going to win us over and get us through this low block from Wales. And Gio Reyna is definitely a guy who's capable of getting that done with Christian.
All right, now let's get into a little bit of predictions for this game. First goal scorer.
And first goal scorer. First goal scorer for the United States. That is, if I think it comes from the United States. I'm going to say it does. I'm going to say it comes from, let's say Josh Sargent. Let's say Josh
There we
Sargent.
go. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm going to say Christian Pulisic. I feel like it's meant to be for Christian. Maybe we find Wales gets a little bit of possession, hit him on a counter attack, maybe a nice little through ball for Christian. Maybe rolling off a guy, a little bit of a run coming through with a guy like Josh Sargent, overlapping, intersecting, all those good words that we like to see from a fluid front three. But yeah, no, I definitely think this is a game where we could see if the U.S. get ahead early, the floodgates could open. Wales is one of those teams, and I think Iran is also in this boat, is if you get that first goal, when Wales starts to come at you and they have to push up higher, getting that second goal can bury them. It can absolutely crush it if the U.S. go up 2-0 before halftime. So let's say 15, 20 minutes in, you get that first goal. Wales tries to come out, and I think that's probably what would happen. That's when that space behind that back line can come in, and that's where guys like Josh Sargent, guys like Timothy Weah, Brendan Aronson can really go to work and have some success.
So that being said, do you think this is going to be a multiple goal thriller for the United States? Do you think it's going to be a tight one? What's your final score prediction?
I'm going to say 3-1, but it's going to be a hell of a lot closer than we think. I think maybe they go up a goal, Wales gets one back, and I think it might be a situation where U.S. are up 2-1 going into the 85th minute, and they get a late winner, or not a late winner, but a late sealer to finish it off, and they're going to give us a couple of heart attacks. Maybe someone makes a bad pass, and then all of a sudden Gareth Bale or Harry Wilson have a shot with some space right outside the box that give us a heart attack, but Matt Turner's got it covered. So I'm going a close, nail-biting 3-1.
Yeah, I think I'm going to be a little less positive. I already chose Josh Sargent as my goal scorer, so that's enough positivity from me. But I'm going to say it's going to be a 2-1. I think Dan James is going to get something just because of the threat that he serves with his pace. I think a goal from Daniel James is going to be a rude awakening to us, but we're going to fight back and we're going to get another goal. And I think we finish it all 2-1.
There we go. Who gets the winner?
Let's say Christian. I'll give him that.
There we go. Can't wait. Monday, early morning for some people. It's 11 a.m. for us here in California. We can't wait. I know all of you guys can't wait. We're going to have so much awesome content around this game. It's going to be cool. We're going to be at watch parties and everything. So look out for social to see where we're going to be at. Maybe you guys can come chat with us. And Ryan, I'm just so excited. I can barely contain myself, the excitement. We were talking on the phone the other day, and the hairs, we were both just like giddy little kids because it's been so long.
Absolutely. And just like being a part of, being there in person, watching these games with communities that actually, care about the game. For so long, I've watched games alone on my television, and I think this is going to be the opportunity to be a part of something bigger, and be with people who care about the game and be a part of something huge. So I'm really excited.
With the World Cup just days away, Ryan, I think it's only fair that we let the people know our overall predictions for both the World Cup and for the U.S. men's national team specifically.
Yeah, so along this World Cup journey, you guys will get our individual game day predictions and everything, but I think it's also important to talk about what we think the big picture. Apart from these three games, what should the United States be aiming for? And I overall, I just want to say, looking to the future, looking beyond this World Cup, 2026 is a huge World Cup as well. So I think this is the opportunity that we give these players experience. Maybe things don't go their way. Maybe these players learn. They may not win it all, but at the very least, the goal for this World Cup is to get these young players the experience of what it means to be at a big tournament. Because come 2026, we should be a contender on our home soil.
Yeah, that's all well and good, but this is the World Cup. These players are talented the goal should be to make a run at this tournament. Now, a realistic goal is not to win it, but I think quarterfinals is a realistic goal. That's what they should be shooting for. The talent that they have is easily good enough and easily talented enough to make it out of the group. And then you should be trying to win that game, make it to the quarterfinals just as far as any U.S. men's national team has ever been, because the level that we've seen the U.S. and the world view of the U.S. is they're a team that can get out of the group, but come those knockout stages, that's where things don't go well. That's where they can't compete. I think this group has the ability to take that next step and to win a game in the knockout stages. So I think the quarterfinals are a very realistic goal for the U.S. And then coming to that, best case to worst case scenario for you.
Oh, man.
For the U.S.
I think a lot of it comes down to the first 20 to 30 minutes in the Wales game. That could be a huge telling sign as to how the rest of this tournament is going to go. If Wales nicks a couple because of their pace, because of their ability on the counter, if they just punch us back right at the start, this could be a very long and difficult tournament for the United States. It all comes down to that, to how we start on Monday, November 21st, how we begin in that game, because that will prove to be how we play the rest of the time. If we don't pick it up against Wales, if we don't rise to the occasion, I could see this tournament going very badly. I could see us going down to England 4-0. That's not what I want to be thinking about right now. I want to be positive. I want to be excited. And that makes me think about the best case. The best case, like you mentioned, is getting to those quarterfinals, winning the quarterfinals. I want to see us go against the likes of England, the likes of whoever we play in the quarters, whether it's Germany, Portugal. I want to see us competing against those kind of teams. We've proven we could play these CONCACAF sides, and we've proven, dude, even against Mexico, we're levels past that.
I completely agree.
I want to see us competing against these big European teams that people talk about as their favorites for the tournament. Even if we lose against these teams in the quarters or the semis, whatever, let's make it difficult. That's my best case scenario.
That is exactly my thoughts. I think you literally just echoed it. I'm not going to try and repeat your points, but a semifinal appearance is obviously a dream. And even a quarterfinal appearance is a lofty goal. But if they can get there, even if it's in the round of 16 against a team like the Netherlands, and they have a real go and compete at that level and really give them a game and show that they have the ability to win that game, cause that team issues, give everything you can for that flag. That's the best case scenario. Is you mentioned you go up against an Argentina, against the Lionel Messi, and then if you go down in a thriller, you come back as heroes and you get ready and take that and learn for 2026. Worst case scenario, you mentioned it, dropping against Wales, because then even a draw against Wales, it's not horrendous, but you're fighting an uphill battle because there's a realistic chance that you have to get something from that England game, and then that game against Iran is a must win.
Now, I would hate for that scenario against Iran to be a must win. They are already being talked about as a dark horse, someone with fury, passion behind them, and I do not want to be going into that game saying this is a do or die, because they could very well be a wild card in this tournament with their attacking options, and we need to secure points early on, and that opportunity is against Wales. We need to take advantage.
USA top scorer.
This is Christian Pulisic's show, man. This is his time to show off, and I think he's gonna get a couple. He's gonna get 3. Beyond that, I'm not sure, but I think he's gonna be the biggest, at least with 2 or 3.
EA Sports agrees with you, and I do too. I feel like, come on, man, we got no controversy here, but yeah, it's Christian's time. This is his time to shine, the moment he's been waiting for. Moving on, breakout star of the tournament. It can be American, it could be someone else. Who is it? Or do both. Your choice.
Oh, it could be anyone, dude. I mean, that's a lot to think about. But I think this tournament, we've been seeing him a lot, but this tournament is where we're gonna see something huge from Anthony Robinson. I could see this guy playing at some of the best teams in the world. I know he's at Fulham right now, and he's doing a great job. But if he performs on this big stage, he is a guy that you could see playing for a top club. Absolutely. His attacking ability, his defensive ability, he is going to be a hot target on the market in the future if he performs well at this tournament. And I think it's his time to shine.
See, I love that pick. I'm going to go with Timothy Weah. And whether or not he's going to be a starter for that Wales game is to be determined. But Timothy Weah, fit and firing, is a handful for any defender. We saw what he did in qualifying. He is so direct and so difficult to defend, especially on the counterattack. I think this is his ability to break out on the world stage because people have kind of forgot about him since he's been dealing with all these injuries and hasn't quite been able to be consistently on the field, whether it be back when he was with PSG or since he's moved to Lille. I think this is an opportunity for Tim Weah to really announce himself as a player that can be at the top level of this game because that's where his talent is. And if he can notch a couple of goals, create a couple opportunities, some setups and stuff, I mean, the suitors for Timothy Weah could be very big.
Absolutely. And now, I mean, with all those goals in mind, now all we could do is sit back and watch, man.
Yep. All right. Final two. Tournament top scorer.
Top scorer. Dude. If you guys know me, you know I'm going in on Argentina this tournament. This is our time. This is Argentina's time for Lionel Messi, the best to ever play. Messi is going to have the tournament of his life.
I completely agree with you, and I don't want to.
What a hot take of us to choose the best player in the world I think, as the best player.
Yeah, hot take right there. We're both like, oh, Messi's going to win he's going to be the top scorer. They're going to win. I'll say just to be different, I'm going to say maybe Benzema scores the most goals, but Argentina win the World Cup. Messi, player of the tournament, establishing himself as the greatest player of all time. Ryan, it's going to be a blast, man. Early morning risers, wake up, watch soccer, go on with the day. I mean, I can't wait.
I will see you on Monday, sir, in person.
Yes, in person. Tons of content coming out, and hopefully us celebrating a 3-point victory. Just the 3 points in a victory for the U.S. I don't know what I'm saying. This isn't the NFL, but I cannot wait. USA Wales, Monday, November 21st, 11 a.m. Pacific time. What is that? 2 p.m. Eastern time. USA versus Wales. We will see you guys after that. I cannot wait.
See you guys.
That's all we got for you on this edition of Stars and Strikes.
This is the place to be for anything and everything USMNT. Check out our other content on YouTube, Spotify, or wherever else you get your podcasts.
Make sure to hit like and subscribe. And also hit us up on social media as we follow the boys on their quest for glory in Qatar. We will see you real soon.